The ability system is one of the least talked about things in the entire Splatoon series, despite being around for that long. Well, it is talked about, but only in the form of, hey Chara, what ability should I use on this weapon? Go use Send to Ink. Regardless, today I wanted to finally talk about it, going over some of my positive and negative opinions, as well as my overall review at the end. So stay tuned for that, and subscribe if you enjoy. Let's start with the main positive. Gear builds allow creativity, expression, and multiple different playstyles on the same weapons. I can't tell you how many players I've seen who prefer to be a more stealthy type of style, and always use Ninja Squid on their type of weapons. I've seen players who are really aggressive use quick respawn. I've seen players who play around mobility try things like run speed and swim speed up, and even those who play around their special or sub weapon with things like sub power and charge up. And even on the rare weapons that have a ton of different builds they can use, I've seen all sorts of builds for something like Splash. Whether you're competitive or casual, gear builds give you the way to express how you want to play the game and tap into and enhance those features. Being able to pick and choose what you want to be better, whether it's gimmick abilities like Thermal Link if you're a blob trying to see people through walls, or standard things like being faster with swim speed. The ability system does a great job of letting you pick and choose how you want to play the game. That is if you have the chunks, of course. All this experimentation is nice, but building gear sets isn't free, and in fact it's one of the most expensive things in the game. The only way to get chunks are through methods of RNG. There's many different ones like Salmon Run rewards or scrubbing gear based off the brand, which has different odds of getting chunks, or ordering pieces of gear off of other players, which could also randomly give you different ones. Or you could try to get some off of Splatnet, or you could roll a literal gotcha machine. I think you get the point. There is a lot of randomness to get chunks or the abilities you want on specific pieces of gear, and while you can store chunks over time, it takes a long time and you can burn through them fast. Stacking multiple pieces of the same ability on a gear costs significantly more chunks, and if you ever want to change a main ability, well, you could order it and pray for a 2% chance, hope it randomly appears on the Splatnet shop, or guess you're spending 45 ability chunks. There is absolutely no way to get chunks non-randomly, and it is a grind to do so, which is a bit unfortunate, because it means if you're someone who doesn't put a lot of hours into the game, you don't get the same freedom of expression as people who have the time to do solo queue for 5 hours a day. By the way, I have a small website partnered with Nintendo and FameHype where you can buy eShop codes. I get a little bit of a kickback from it, so if you're interested in buying it, you can check it out, and you can use code ProChara for 5% off until the end of the month. Enjoy the video. Hey though, it's not all bad. Some of the abilities are more than just these stackable ones we've talked about. They have really interesting or unique effects. You have something like Drop Roller, giving you the ability to get a nice dodge roll after landing from a super jump, or something like an Inkjet Recall, which is really interesting and has a cool dynamic. Or you have Ninja Squid, which I mentioned prior, as a unique trade-off ability, something that gives you more stealthy swimming, but at the cost of your movement speed, which while you can offset it with swim speed, costs even more gear. Personally, trade-off abilities like these are some of my most favorite, but I think the game does a great job with having many different main exclusive abilities with unique gimmicks that you can play towards that are really cool for the specific weapons that run them. Unfortunately though, while Splatoon 2 added a lot of those abilities, Splatoon 3 added pretty much nothing. Outside of reworking bomb defense to sub defense, with the only real major change being that it doesn't work against specials, a good change by the way, but way too complicated to talk about here. The only true new ability we got in this game is Intensify Action Up, which can decrease jump RNG as well as boost the effectiveness of the Squid Roll and Surge. While this ability is awesome and totally fine in its own right, it's crazy that that's the only ability when we got so many new ones in Splatoon 2. I think there's a lot of potential for more new abilities, especially some of the trade-off ones I mentioned earlier. Maybe that'll have to be its own video if you guys want to see it. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these new updates does come with new abilities, but I think it's extremely disappointing that the game only launched with one brand new ability. At least another interesting thing about the ability system is it being tied with your gear. I think it's really cool that both of these work together in a unique way, and it means players can pick out what kind of stuff they want to wear to stylize while also working on effective abilities. It's cool to see just how different every person's Inkling looks through their own customization. Unfortunately, the customization on the abilities is a bit limited because of a concept called utility subs. If you care about having slightly optimal gear sets, there's a lot of sub abilities you want one sub of. Do you play anything not perfectly accurate that's also not a blaster? Well, congratulations, you probably want one sub of Intensify Action because that reduces jump RNG by 40%. Do you play anything that might die? Well, guess what? One sub of Special Saver saber saves around 8% of your special. You definitely need that too. By the way, did you know the .1 sub defense saves from a lot of combos, like slosh or splat bomb to slosh combo, or things like 3 outside fizzy hits killing, so you better have one of those as well. Oh, and don't forget that Incres prevents you from taking a slight amount of damage and slowdown when you touch enemy ink, and 1 sub is pretty effective, giving you about 10 frames worth, so you might want one of those as well. Oh, and there's also quick super jump, which drastically decreases the amount of time you need before you leave the ground by over 20 frames, or a third of a second, so that can get you out of situations and into them way faster. I think you see the point. Almost half of your sub abilities for most weapons in the game are kind of taken by these utility subs that everyone needs to run, which is just kind of boring. You want to know something else cool about the ability system? It has a great track record with reworks. Splatoon 1 Quick Respawn and Stealth Jump were both broken in their own rights, with Quick Respawn working every time you died and Stealth Jump completely hiding your marker, instead having a 20% penalty in that game. The reworks of having Quick Respawn only activate if you don't get kills first still leaves it more than practical, as there's plenty of situations where you're going to go down and not play perfectly or just get killed by some random special. And Stealth Jump hiding your marker if you're far away from people leaves more than enough practical situations for it to be used. There's also other examples. You could argue Intensify Action as reworked main power-up, since the decreased jump RNG was in effect main power pad at the very least. And there's stuff like Ninja Squid, which recently got changed in this game. While at the start of it, you got the Ninja Squid effect right when going into enemy ink, making it super useful when you're fighting up close. It now only happens after the first 30 frames of swimming, which gives much more counterplay options while leaving it effective at longer ranges and still impactful to some degree up close. And sub defense is another good example, preventing things like Inkjet from just taking way too long to be able to kill the opponent, but only against people who knew about the .1 sub defense to make it a 3-shot instead of a 2-shot with the medium hit. When Nintendo cares enough to rework an ability, they have a really good track record with it. Unfortunately, there's also some abilities they've just been too lazy to change. Last Ditch Effort was one of the main contributing factors to Splatoon 2's terrible endgame meta, allowing for 8 subs of main saver, sub saver, and recovery up, which is just far too many. And with the rework to activate after the points go from 50 or lower, with it fully being active at 30, it would pretty much always be up in points where you needed it. Even if it's not as broken now, whenever it is used, it only exemplifies the worst attributes in the game, such as double fizzy bomb spam with machine in this game, which was pretty prevalent, especially in the old double splash, double machine meta. Respawn Punisher is probably the most prevalent example today though. I get it, when this ability was added to the game, you wanted to make sure Quick Respawn didn't take over Splatoon 2, but it's been so many years now. Do we really want an ability in the game that incentivizes passive gameplay and just, you know, makes everyone play the game less? It seems like a pretty terrible idea for an ability. It's also only ever made already extreme weapons like Charger have a more extreme nature, which has only hurt them. Either they're able to take advantage of Respawn Punisher and feel incredibly controlling over a game, or Respawn Punisher doesn't work, such as against Tacticooler, and it feels awful for the E-liter user. These outdated abilities only feel terrible for everyone going against them, and they're far from a new problem. There's definitely more to talk about with the ability system, but I think these are all the main points, and it's pretty interesting. I wish this system was talked about a bit more, but I also get why it's not. While it has so many amazing qualities that add to the game so much, it's held back by the smallest of reasons. There are so many simple fixes, such as making utility subs just things you have by default with your Inklings so you don't have to run them, or allowing you to purchase chunks, which you can still easily make the more expensive of the options, and even something as simple as allowing players to test out whatever ability combinations they want in something like a training room to see what sets they want to make, rather than having to make and test them in-game or look up data on an external site like Sendoing. The ability system is a lot like many things in Splatoon 3, where while it's an overall amazing thing, there are some small things holding it back that would be so easy to fix. Honestly, I just have to hope it happens. Each game has improved the ability system slightly, but the pace and quality of life changes have been really slow. We had to wait all the way from Splatoon 2 to 3 just to be able to change the main abilities, which is something that could have very easily have been added in an update. I really hope other improvements to the system won't have to wait for Splatoon 4 to be able to happen, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up either. As a whole though, I'd probably give the system a 7.5 out of 10, but if they were to fix the smallest problems, it could easily be a 9. We'll have to see what happens in future updates. Let me know what you think about the ability system, and I'll see you all next time.